It was a quiet morning on the outskirts of Ash Creek, the kind of morning where the world seemed to hold its breath, the mist hanging low over the forest like a curtain, muffling the sounds of the waking world. Thunder, the horse, was the first to stir. His powerful legs shifted in the soft earth as he wandered deeper into the woods, drawn by something he couldn't explain. He wasn't alone in his curiosity. There was a strange pull to the trees, a sense of urgency in the air that even he, with his sharp instincts, couldn't ignore. As he moved further through the dense forest, his hooves crunching softly on the leaves beneath, his sharp eyes caught sight of something unexpected. A small box, tucked away in the underbrush, its edges crinkled with age. The horse snorted, stepping closer. His large, dark eyes examined the box, and a strange sensation washed over him. Something deep in his heart told him that this wasn't just any box. Slowly, with his gentle nose, he nudged the box, causing it to open. Inside, wrapped in a threadbare blanket, was a tiny baby, its small chest rising and falling in the softest of breaths. Thunder's instincts kicked in. He nudged the baby again, gently this time, as if trying to wake it. But no movement. The horse stood still, his heart pounding in his chest. This child was alone. And Thunder, with no understanding of why, knew one thing for certain. He couldn't leave it there. The baby needed help, and it was up to him to make sure it would get that help. Back at the farmhouse, Sarah had just finished her morning routine when she heard a faint whinny from the yard. Looking out the window, she saw Thunder, standing protectively near the edge of the woods, his dark eyes fixed on the forest beyond. It wasn't unusual for the horse to be outside, but today something was different. His body was tense, his ears flicking back and forth. Sarah's heart raced. The unsettling feeling that had been creeping over her since the night before hadn't dissipated. She had tried to shake it off, but now, seeing Thunder's unease, she knew something wasn't right. She glanced down at the baby, now nestled in a bassinet beside the kitchen table. The child had brought nothing but joy to her life. Yet it seemed as though the closer Sarah got to the baby, the more the sense of danger hung in the air. Could the mysterious figure she'd seen lurking in the woods be after the child? She couldn't understand why someone would want to harm a helpless infant, but she couldn't ignore the nagging suspicion that the answer was somewhere in the shadows of the past. Thunder snorted again, pulling Sarah back from her thoughts. She stood there for a moment, unsure what to do. The baby needed her, but so did Thunder. He had always been her loyal protector, and now it seemed he was trying to warn her of an unknown threat. The sense of impending danger grew stronger with each passing second. The day after Thunder's unsettling discovery, Sarah felt the weight of the secret pressing on her chest. She needed answers. Something about the baby didn't sit right with her, and she couldn't shake the feeling that the small town of Ash Creek was hiding something. She wrapped the baby in a soft blanket, cradling it close to her as she stepped outside the farmhouse and walked toward the town square. As Sarah walked down the quiet, tree-lined street, the whispers began. First, there were murmurs from a group of elderly women standing outside the bakery. Their eyes darted toward her, and Sarah could hear the faintest giggles, as though they were gossiping about something they had long since judged. The whispers spread quickly, and before long, everyone seemed to know that she had found the baby. When Sarah reached the town's small diner, she sat at the counter, hoping for some answers. But as soon as she sat down, the conversation around her stopped. She could feel the weight of everyone's stares on her, as though they were all waiting for her to ask the questions they were afraid to answer. The bartender, a man named Carl, finally broke the silence, his voice quiet but heavy with something unspoken. "Not many people know the history around here," Carl said, "but if you dig long enough, you'll find some old stories. Stories about babies that go missing and the strange things that happen afterward." Back at the farmhouse, the bond between Sarah and Thunder had always been strong, but it was in the quiet moments when it truly blossomed. As Sarah sat on the porch, rocking the baby gently in her arms, Thunder trotted over to her. The horse nuzzled her shoulder, his warm breath brushing against her skin, and Sarah smiled softly, her anxiety momentarily soothed. She had always trusted Thunder. The horse had been with her through thick and thin, from her childhood to now, and in those silent, fleeting moments, she knew he was the one creature that would never let her down. The horse had an uncanny ability to sense her moods. When she was happy, Thunder would playfully nudge her, and when she was sad, he would stand close, his large body a comforting presence. Today, though, his gentleness took on a different tone. As Sarah rocked the baby, Thunder stood nearby, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon. He didn't act like this unless something was off. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she realized that Thunder was not just guarding her, but something far more important. He was watching over the baby. There was a deep instinctual connection between them, one that neither Thunder nor Sarah could quite understand. As the afternoon sun dipped below the horizon, Thunder remained close, his protective presence a constant reminder of the danger lurking just outside their peaceful home. The following evening, as twilight crept over the farmland, Sarah felt a strange unease creep into her bones. The breeze had picked up, rustling the trees, but it was more than just the wind. It was as though something was lurking just beyond the edge of the woods, something watching her, waiting. She looked over at Thunder, who had been unusually still for the past few hours, his ears flicking nervously toward the forest. A sudden sound broke the silence, a rustle of leaves in the distance. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The horse snorted, his body tense as he stamped a hoof, his eyes narrowing. There was no mistaking it now. Someone was out there. She grabbed the baby from its crib and rushed to the window, peering out into the growing darkness. The figure she saw standing at the edge of the forest was a silhouette, tall and unmoving. He seemed to be watching her, his eyes hidden in shadow. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. It was the same figure she had seen several times before, always on the outskirts of her vision, always watching from the trees. Without thinking, she stepped back from the window, her pulse quickening. The stranger had returned. Thunder, sensing her fear, let out a low whinny and trotted toward the edge of the yard. He was ready to protect her, ready to face whatever danger was approaching. Sarah knew that tonight, something was about to change. She just didn't know if it was for better or worse. The next morning, as Sarah sat in the kitchen, still reeling from the encounter with the stranger, there was a knock on the door. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Could it be him again? But when she opened the door, she found herself face to face with Detective Greaves. "Morning, Sarah," Greaves said, tipping his hat. "I hope I'm not disturbing you?" "No, it's fine," Sarah replied, though she couldn't hide the wariness in her voice. "What's going on?" "I've been doing some digging," Greaves said, stepping inside, "and I think it's time we had a conversation. About the baby." Sarah's stomach clenched. She hadn't spoken much about the baby's origins to anyone other than Hank. She had been too afraid of what people might think, what they might say. But now, with Detective Greaves standing before her, she knew the questions were only going to get harder to ignore. "I looked into the history of the town," Greaves continued, his voice low, "and I found something strange. Years ago, there was a case of a missing baby, a baby that was never found. But the thing is, the details don't add up. The baby's parents were never found either." Sarah listened intently, her mind racing. "What does this have to do with my baby?" "I don't know yet," Greaves said grimly, "but I think your baby might be connected to that case. There are too many coincidences. We need to find out more before things get worse." Later that evening, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, going over the things Detective Greaves had said. The missing baby case, the strange, unexplained disappearances that had haunted the town years before. She couldn't shake the feeling that her life had become entwined with something much bigger than she could understand. The old case file was spread out before her, the yellowed pages crinkling as she touched them. Photographs from decades ago, black and white images of a smiling couple, their faces now faded with time. But it was the photograph of the baby that held her gaze. It was the same child, or at least it could have been. The resemblance between the baby in the photograph and the one she now held in her arms was uncanny. Sarah's heart skipped a beat as she examined the image more closely. But it wasn't just the photograph that unsettled her. There were inconsistencies in the story too. The baby had disappeared without a trace, and yet there was no sign of foul play, no ransom notes, no demand for anything. It was as if the baby had simply vanished into thin air. Suddenly, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Sarah had always known that there was something strange about the baby's arrival. The inexplicable way Thunder had found the child, the mysterious feeling that hung over the farm. Now it all made sense. But the question remained, why was this happening again? And what did it mean for her and the baby? As the days passed, Sarah could feel the tension mounting. Every time she went outside, Thunder would be standing at the edge of the property, his gaze fixed on the trees in the distance. His presence was a constant reminder that something was wrong, something that neither he nor Sarah could fully understand. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah heard a strange noise in the woods. It was faint at first, like the rustling of leaves. But as the noise grew louder, it became clear. It was footsteps. Someone or something was out there. Thunder snorted, his body rigid with alertness. The horse's powerful frame seemed to grow even larger as he stood at the edge of the yard, watching the trees. Sarah, clutching the baby to her chest, moved closer to him, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew Thunder was trying to warn her, trying to tell her that something was coming. But what? The horse's ears flicked back and forth, and then he let out a low, warning whinny. Sarah's blood ran cold as she realized it wasn't just a random sound. Someone or something was out there, and Thunder was not about to let it get any closer. That night, as Sarah lay in bed, she couldn't shake the unease that clung to her like a second skin. The events of the day had left her feeling shaken, especially after Thunder's warning. But it was the conversation with Detective Greaves that lingered in her mind. His words had been cryptic, his eyes shadowed with something unspoken. There was a danger here, a secret buried deep within the town's history. She replayed the conversation in her mind. "I've heard rumors about the baby," Greaves had said, his voice low. "They're connected to something much darker. You need to be careful." But what did he mean by that? Was it just the missing baby case he was referring to? Or was there something more sinister lurking in the shadows? Sarah knew one thing for certain. The town wasn't just hiding the truth about the baby, it was hiding something far worse. She couldn't ignore the sense of foreboding that had taken root in her gut. Someone knew more than they were letting on, and that someone had to be stopped before they could cause any more harm. As Sarah looked out the window, her eyes scanning the darkness, she made a vow. She would uncover the dangerous secret the town had kept for so long, no matter the cost. The next day, Sarah was on edge. The events of the previous night had left her shaken, and the presence of the mysterious figure from the woods weighed heavily on her mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that somehow, someone was always just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. It wasn't long before Sarah noticed him again. The same shadowy figure standing at the edge of the woods watching the farmhouse. This time she wasn't about to let fear keep her inside. Grabbing the baby from its crib, Sarah moved quickly to the door. She was determined to confront the stranger, to demand answers. When she stepped outside, the figure was still there, motionless. His face was hidden in the shadows, but his eyes glinted in the dim light, fixed on her and the baby. Thunder, sensing Sarah's resolve, stood beside her, his body tense, ready to defend. "What do you want?" Sarah called out, her voice steady despite the fear that gnawed at her. "Why are you watching us?" The figure didn't answer. Instead, he stepped forward, his silhouette growing clearer in the fading light. And then, without warning, he spoke. "You don't know what you've gotten yourself into," he said, his voice chilling. "But you will, soon." Before Sarah could respond, the figure turned and disappeared into the woods, leaving only the sound of his retreating footsteps behind. Thunder snorted, his body still coiled in tension, and Sarah felt a chill run down her spine.